Have you ever been scared to go into the woods? Have you ever been scared of ghosts? Or been scared of the dreaded map? Then I have a movie that you should absolutely under no circumstances watch: The Blair Witch Project. When talking about something like this, the scariest movie of all time, or the best horror director of all time, it can be really hard to come up with an even definitive answer on that question. The answers to those kinds of questions are completely subjective and up to the person who's interpreting the question. But I want to argue a point today that at the very least, The Blair Witch Project is one of the scariest movies of all time, if not the scariest movie of all time. And that is because of a few key things. First, one of the most important parts of this film: the marketing. The marketing for the Blair Witch Project is at least why the movie got as popular as it did, as quick as it did. If you have no clue about the marketing for this movie, I will tell you just a little bit about it. So this movie had one of the first internet ad campaigns that kind of harnessed what the internet could do. It used websites and forum boards to trick people months in advance that the movie was real. For example, it created a website that you could view footage from the reels of the people who went missing. You could see photos of the missing people in their description, as well as interviews from people's parents, friends, people that lived in Burkittsville, crime scene evidence, a bunch of things to look at and see. This added to people's fear and heightened sense of reality in a world that wasn't already permeated by found footage films. So of course, when people actually went to go see this film, for at least a few moments, they thought the movie was real. The movie being real scared people so much more than other movies did at the time. This whole idea would later be kind of not copied, but done again in the Paranormal Activity movies, which would then amp up found footage as well. Think of it very much like Halloween and Friday the 13th. Halloween came out, and Friday the 13th copied Halloween, but then after Friday the 13th came out, everyone copied Friday the 13th. Same exact thing here. The Blair Witch Project came out and popularized found footage, and then Paranormal Activity came out, and then everyone copies Paranormal Activity rather than copying The Blair Witch Project. The next thing that I think this movie really benefited from was, like I mentioned, found footage really was not as prominent in horror movies as it would be after The Blair Witch Project. Of course, the found footage movie existed before The Blair Witch Project. Some people would probably point to Cannibal Holocaust as being the first found footage film, but every movie that has come out after this movie has ripped off The Blair Witch Project or ripped off Paranormal Activity and not Cannibal Holocaust, for like many reasons. I am going to include some of the other things that the producers did to make the Blair Witch Project feel real, just because I think that's part of the most fascinating part of the whole Blair Witch mythology. At some point, I will have a video about kind of going around Burkittsville, looking at some of the sites, things they filmed at, what it really looks like in real life now, because I think that'd be kind of fun. I am in love with the Blair Witch Project mythology. I can talk to you for hours about this, and that's part of the same reason why, is because of the way that this internet ad campaign worked, as well as it's kind of my boogeyman in a way. I grew up hearing about this movie all the time, how they were in the woods, and yeah. But like I was going to do, I'm going to tell you some things that they really did in real life to make this movie seem real. They put up fake missing people's posters around Sundance when they went to go show the movie there. But what I think is kind of interesting is they actually had to take them all down because at the time in that area, there was an actual missing persons investigation going on, so they were only up for like an hour or something. The other thing I think that's really interesting that most movies don't do is they, instead of having dialogue, as in you have to say this, this, and this, and this, it was more information you have to convey. You have to convey this information and all of this pieces of information and do these actions, and that's what I think actually adds a major part to the way this movie feels so real, and kind of real yet surreal, because it feels so like you're actually watching footage from someone, and it's crazy how well it works. The last thing I want to talk about that I think really sold this movie without a doubt is the sci-fi documentary that premiered a few months before the movie came out in theaters, and kind of told the world a little bit about the mythology of the Blair Witch, what it was, where they're located at, and all that stuff. Kind of gave another sense of reality to it, because there's a high chance that someone watched that sci-fi documentary and did not know it was about the Blair Witch Project. and it makes it feel like it was a real mythology that really existed in that part of Maryland. And that is why I think this movie works. This mythology, the mythology that these people created, has not only transcended from a fake mythology into a real mythology, I would argue that this mythology has kind of infected the real world. The movie partially feels so real because the years since the movie's release, the mythology has become more and more real, which I personally think is pretty cool. I grew up hearing about the Blair Witch all the time. I didn't know what it was a movie, I just heard everything. I live in the woods. I've heard a lot about the Blair Witch, and I think that's what makes the movie so scary. And at least to me personally, it's not only a fake mythology. As being someone who was born after the movie came out, the mythology is real to me. It wasn't an invented mythology. It's always been my mythology about this part of Maryland. It feels real. Scariest movie of all time? Potentially. It's definitely up there without a doubt, and I definitely think this movie will stand the test of time, and rightfully very, very so. What do you think? Do you think this movie is one of the scariest movies of all time, or do you think over time this movie has lost its weight as people just know more and more about the making of the movie and that it's not a real thing? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're there, make sure you like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that. You can go follow us on @MediaBiteCo on TikTok and @MediaBiteCompany on Instagram. Listen to all of the podcasts on the MediaBite Podcast Network, which I would deeply appreciate. And I'll say happy Halloween, everyone, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.